Hi and welcome back to another video from Effective Dashboards. In this video we will be looking at a risk management dashboard case study. Okay, so let's get started. So we've got a case study here, and just to set the scene I'm going to go through the background and I'm going to go through the requirements, and then I'm going to go and hop into Power BI and explain the dashboard I've created to meet these requirements, and I'm going to talk you through my thought process. So hopefully you'll find it useful. Hopefully you'll be able to get some ideas for building your own risk management dashboards. This is based on risk of equipment defects, but this could be equally applicable to project risks or business risks or any risks. Okay, so if we start off with the background, we've got a plant, and over the last few years it's had several critical equipment failures. And these failures have resulted in high levels of plant downtime. Now, downtime results in an inability to produce the product, and also if an equipment fails catastrophically, it can also be very costly to repair that. So it really has an impact on both sides of the business. The revenue is reduced and also the expenses and the costs are increased. So there was an investigation done, and the root cause analysis which was carried out into each one of these failures had a common theme, and the theme was increasing the visibility of risks and putting a more robust risk management process in place. And one of the recommendations, apart from putting a risk management process in place or to support the risk management process, was to create an accompanying tool that allowed us to look at the risk and understand where our risks were, and ultimately do something to manage or eliminate these risks. So if we look at the requirements, there were 5 key requirements, plenty of other ones, but these are the 5 key requirements. So the first requirement is to create a high-level overview of the current risk status at the site. So what is the current risk status at the site? Using some sort of high-level metric or high-level indicator that allows management and C-level management to be able to see, right, okay, are we in a red, amber, or green state type of thing. Next was to provide a risk matrix, and a matrix that allows you to see how many defects were in each area of the matrix. So we're going to go into the matrix in a second, a 5x5 matrix, but how many work orders or work orders to repair these defects are in each section of that matrix. So we can see how many are in the high section, how many are in the medium section, and how many are in the low risk section. There should also be the ability to click on each one of these sections and see the related work orders. Next is to provide analysis of pre and post mitigation risk. So in this particular business process for creating work orders to address a defect, there are 2 risk analysis or risk rankings carried out. There's one that is the as-is status. So as we find the defect, what is the potential risk associated with it? And there's another post-mitigation risk assessment done, and that is once we've put some temporary or short-term or some sort of mitigation or mitigating steps in place, what is the risk after some mitigation has been put in place. Now, this might not be the case for all business processes. It might just be a case that you've got a risk ranking and that's what it is. But in this particular example, we're going to use a pre and a post approach. And this might be temporary repairs, or it might be bringing a piece of equipment offline, or not running it quite as often, or not running it to its full capacity or whatever. And finally, we want to be able to see, are we getting better or worse in terms of risk? And we want to be able to see how many defects over time have there been at the site, and are these reducing, or are these increasing, or have they plateaued? And we want to see these split over different risk groupings. We want to be able to see high risk, medium risk, and low risk defects, and what the trend is for each one of those. So let's pop into Power BI and we'll look at what I've actually done to meet these requirements. Okay, so this is the front page, and I think if we just view it on a full screen. So the idea behind this is that this page would be something that just gives a really high level indication of what the current status is. So what I've done here is I've put a box here, and I've created a new metric called the critical equipment risk status. And this has got 4 different values. it's got a red value, it's got an orange value, it's got a yellow value, and it's got a red value. I'm just going to flick across and I'll just show you what these mean. So there's a quick description here of what each of these mean. And what I've done is I've actually used a similar status to similar descriptions and similar categories to that used for the UK terror alert status, which the government sets. And I thought, well, you know, that's a good starting place, so let's use something similar to that. In terms of the actual wording here, so the first one is red, and that's a colour I've used for each one of these. But critical, and it's high risk of business impact failure. So this is the case if a defect exists post-mitigation, so it's all post-mitigation, in the high-risk group. So when we talk about high-risk group, what we're talking about is in that red section of the risk matrix. And as if by magic, it's just appeared here because I've just realised that it would be handy to have this at the side of this table to explain exactly what I'm talking about here. So in here, so 15 and above will be an overall plant status of critical, and it's saying here that we've got a high risk of high business impact failure. So that's now very good if we've got something in here. Now these numbers here are just numbers I've allocated to each one of these boxes based on the multiplication of the likelihood and the severity. So yeah, that's all I've done here. But normally what this would do is it would count, you'll see the dashboard, it'll count the number of defects that are sitting in each one of these zones. Next is orange. So orange is kind of, well, first of all, let me cover yellow and green because they're quite straightforward. So yellow is basically anything that sits in this yellow area. So if we've no risks in the red area and we do have risks in this yellow area, then it will be yellow, substantial, possibility of medium severity business impact. And then if it's green, if there's nothing in yellow, nothing in orange, nothing in yellow, then it's green, low risk of business. Low risk of business impact failure. So there's a low risk of anything impacting the business. Now the other thing that I've got here is I've got a kind of in between red and yellow status here, which is orange. And this is possibility of high severity business impact failure. And if we've got a situation where we've got no reds, but we do have something which is, or we do have defects that are sitting in this area here. So defect exists in the post-mitigation consequences severity equals 5. So basically it means that we've got something sitting here. So there's still even though it's very unlikely or unlikely to impact us or to happen, we've still got a potential for a severe incident to happen. And that's why I've put this orange in here. Now you could just be pretty straightforward and do red, yellow and green, but I just wanted to show you that you can do different levels within here, and I've put the orange. So if something exists in here, then it'll be orange, and then the yellow and the green if they only exist in one of these areas. So hopefully that's giving you an idea about how this overall risk status has been established. So then we've got the risk matrix here, so that is telling us the number of defects or work orders that are in each one of these, and we can see here that we've got 2 in this high risk area. We've got one here which has got significant and very likely to happen, and we've got one that's moderate and very likely to happen, and that's why this status here is red. Now the other thing I've done is, if you remember back to the table, it had a little bit of a description next to it. I've put that in here underneath the risk status just to give a little bit of extra description as to what that means. Now I did have that as red, but I thought it was a bit too much, so I've just kind of used a kind of dark grey for this colour here. I've highlighted this in red. I think if it goes to orange and yellow, well, I know if it goes to orange and yellow, this will highlight that colour as well. So I think this is not overkill. Normally I don't really like to use these borders and stuff, but I think it does make sense here. And if we bear in mind how this is going to be viewed, it's going to be on a big screen, or in an office, or in a plant, so that you can see straight away what the current status is. Now the thing I always like to put in place when we're putting in a dashboard is the so what. So it's red, it's critical, but what's happening with these critical work orders. Now, and it's just a little bit of 3 different points here that just provide a little bit of extra information. And remember, this is a really high level, so we don't need too much information at this point, but it just gives anybody looking at this a bit of extra information as to what the status is related to these defects. So first of all, there are 2 high-level defects at the site. It's just fairly obvious, you can see that, but I've just reiterated it. The second is that none of these defects are scheduled for repair in the next 7 days. So this is dynamically created text here. None of these defects are scheduled, and that's quite important because we want to know, okay, we've got 2 defects, but when are they likely to be repaired? And we can get the detail later on, but this is just really high level. None of these. So that's why it's got a red cross here, and that's got a red cross here as well. And then here we've got none of the defect repairs are currently in backlog. So that's a good sign. That's why it's got a tick here. I've opted not to use the green. I've opted just to keep it the same color as the text here. And it's really just to draw the attention. It's quite colorful as it is with this matrix here. So it's just to draw the attention to things that are red and things we need to pay attention to. There's already quite a bit of color here, so I didn't want to use additional color here, even though it's quite small. So we've got 2 high-risk defects. None of them are scheduled in the next 7 days, but none of these defect repairs are currently in backlog, which means they're past their target finish date, which is quite important. The target finish date is a date which is provided by the risk ranking here. So that's the first screen. So the next thing you would most likely need is to understand what are these work orders. So click on here, and it takes us to the second screen. So this screen has got a lot more detail in it, and this is probably designed to be looked at a desktop and discussed with the plant, the site supervisors and team leaders. So what we've got here is we've got the matrix in a bit of a smaller form, and this time it's interactive. So if you click on here, it's going to show you the work order for that's sitting here, and that's something we're going to be really interested in. What this work order is, and some of the details related to that work order. I would probably actually put the schedule date in here. I've only got the target date just now. But in here I would put the scheduled date to see if it's actually scheduled. Now, the other thing we've got in here is I've color coded this. If the work order is past its target finish date, it's red, and if the target finish date is in the future, it is not red. It's just a normal color, so we can clearly see which of these work orders are in our backlog. The other thing we've got is this screen is probably designed to allow the different team leaders to be able to go in and look at their high risk defects and try and understand what they are and look to get them put into a schedule, or look to get them progressed to a point where they can be actually executed. And that's why we've got this list here that allows us to see for each of the different departments, maintenance, integrity, wells, operation, drilling, engineering, etc., what the count of defects are. And if they click on that, then we can see that this is filtered and this is all filtered to allow them just to see their information. And we can see at the top here we've got an overview of the current number of defects, the total number of defects. So this is a fairly straightforward dashboard, allows us to go in, see the work orders, relate to each of the risk matrix risk ranking areas, and then split it by department. So I've come out of full screen mode for just now, just so we can kind of easily make it a bit easier to move between the different screens. So we've covered the risk status, we've covered the risk matrix with defects. Now it's mitigation analysis. So one of the requirements was to understand what the risk was before mitigation is put in place, and then what the risk is after mitigation has been put in place. So in here we've got quite a few bits and pieces in this screen here, and this is probably going to be used by somebody who wants to understand a little bit more about the risk and understand exactly how much mitigation we've got in place, so we've got the right mitigation in place, etc. So we've got two risk matrices here. The first one is the pre-mitigation status. Now, just to explain the difference between post and pre-mitigation, I'm going to flick into a slide. So we can see here, whenever a new defect, a new work order is created in our system, our computerized maintenance management system, there's 2 risk assessments carried out. Now, the first one is a pre-mitigation, and this is going to look at our exposure to risk prior to installing any mitigating measures. Okay, so you might put some mitigating measures in place. It might be the same. There might be no mitigation measures you can put in place, so the pre and the post will be exactly the same. However, often what you can find is that you carry out a risk assessment and then you look at what mitigating steps can you put in place, and it might be something like a temporary repair. It might be something like not running the equipment. It might be something like not running the equipment as hard, or that it's full capacity or full speed. So there's a number of different mitigating actions that you can put in place. Now these actions typically tend to be temporary in nature, and that's why we want to keep an eye on what they are. Once they're in place, then we've got the post-mitigation. So this is really more of an indication of the current risk exposure, assuming that the specified authorization mitigation actions have been implemented. We can see here that in this example here, whatever we put in place has reduced the likelihood. So there's still a significant potential impact, but it's reduced the likelihood from likely to unlikely. And we can see that it's moved here. So the pre-mitigation risk ranking would be one work order in this high impact zone. But once we've looked at that defect and we've understood it a little bit more, and we've put maybe a temporary repair in place, we've bought ourselves some time, and the likelihood has gone down. The likelihood of this piece of equipment failing and the impact on the business has reduced. So back to this risk mitigation analysis page. So at the top here, I liked the idea of just putting in here, and I thought it was interesting for people to know it and understand how much of the work they've managed to mitigate. Because if this was, there's no target here, but you kind of get the sense if only 10% the defects were able to be mitigated, you could probably put some additional mitigation in place. If it was 90%, then perhaps it's a bit too much. So it starts off with 790 work orders. That's how many we've got currently open. That's how many defects are at the site. So quite a lot. And then if we can see here that 378 of these have been mitigated, and that accounts for 48%. So 48% of the work has been mitigated to some degree. So we've reduced the risk, and that's important because we're looking at overall risk to our plant production, and we've been able to put some sort of short-term mitigations or temporary mitigations in place in 48% of the cases. So that's good. In here we've got the pre-mitigation risk, and then we've got the post-mitigation risk. So I've added an arrow because I think it just helps to draw the eye between the two of them, and lets you see that lets you see the pre and the post risk matrices. And then underneath each one, what I've done is I've broken it down and I've grouped in the high, medium, and low risk groupings, and I've summed up the number of risks for each one of these, or the number of defects for each one of these. So we can see we've got, before we've got any mitigation in place, we've got a high number, the highest number actually, almost twice as much as low in terms of medium potential impact defects. We've got 24 high and we've got 283 low. But we can see once we've kind of considered mitigation and we've put some mitigation in place, that's been reduced. This is a better picture. So we've got far more low potential impact defects. We've reduced the medium and we've reduced the high significantly. So the high is reduced very significantly from 24 to 2. Over the side here, we've got the difference. Again, just for each one of these different squares here, these likelihood and severity permutations, we've got 20, 16, 15. So remember each one of these, so 20 is going to be this box here, which is 4 times 5, and this one here, which is 5 times 4. So for each risk ranking, we can see before there was 4, so there was this one here, which is 20, yep, it had 4, there was none in that box there, so there was 4 there. It's now been reduced to 1, as the difference is 3, and that's a 75% reduction. And we can see that there's a little visual here that you can see, and this is letting us see that all of these have been reduced in the high and the medium impact, and all of these have increased in the low impact, which is what we want. We want to see mitigation reducing the impact or potential impact on the business. And then if you just want to see at a grouping level rather than an individual risk ranking level, then you can see high, medium, and low. 24 to 2, it's a reduction of 22, which is a reduction in 91%. And then we can see it here as well. that's reduced by almost 40%, and this is increased by 42%. Sorry, 72%. So this is just giving us a feel for the pre and post mitigation. Now, some of the interactive features here, if you click on this one, well, let's click on individual ones here. So if you click on that one there, you'll be able to see the picture for this particular post or pre-mitigation defects. So we can see one stayed the same. We've been unable to impact one of these. These have reduced the severity. The likelihood is reduced for these two, and the likelihood and severity has reduced for this one here. So we can see, and then the picture is here. We had 4. One stayed the same. One's gone to medium. 2 have gone to the medium area, and 1 has gone to the low area. And we get that for each one of these. Now, if you want to see it just from a high-level grouping point of view, the same thing is available here. So we can see what's happened to these 24 high-level or high-impact, high-potential impact defects, and how have they actually spread through here. Now, some of them probably don't make too much sense. That one there, for example, the likelihood's gone up, but the likelihood's gone down, but the severity has gone up. But this is just dummy data that's been created. So, and that may be an indication to go and question that. Has that been actually categorized correctly? Because mitigation should reduce, or at the very least, keep the same likelihood and severity. Should at very least be the same or less in terms of both likelihood and severity. I'm sure there'll be exceptions, but that's how it is for just now. Okay, so that is the risk mitigation analysis dashboard that I created. So let's click on the final one. So this one here is the defect risk trend analysis. So this one is an analysis dashboard, and I've put quite a bit of text in here because I think this is going to be one that you would look at to understand exactly what's happening with each of the different trends. So let's go and just focus on one of these because they're all the same really, but just this is looking at the high risk defect trends, medium, low, and this is a total trend for all defects. So what I've got here is I've got a bit of text here, and this is dynamic. So if these numbers change, this all changes. And we start off with the high risk defects have increased by 100% from 1 to 2. So over the period of time, the high risk defects have increased. Now the other thing I've done here is I've actually put a start and an end because I think this really is good at just showing the actual start and end points and just draws your attention to it. I've got rid of all the other indicators because I think all the other data labels, because I think they just muddy the waters. The start and the end and the high, that's all I've got. And now this, I'm going to create a course on this and I'm going to talk you through exactly what I've done to build this. But I think in terms of best practice, that's really something that I really enjoy. I really think is useful. Enjoy is probably the word I would use, but certainly I find it useful to see the start, the end, and the highs. Date range. There's a trend here and there's a target there. Now the target is 0, so it's a little bit less obvious, but that to me is a good chart to allow you to look at it and say, right, okay, well, we've increased, so it's now good, but it's only from 1 to 2. The high point was 4, so we're down from 4, so that's good. The trend is increasing and we're above the target. And then below, I've got these indicators here, which are color-coded. They're all red, which isn't particularly great, but they will be color-coded to be either red or to be the same color as this, which is like a dark gray or a black color. Red draws the attention to it. Now again, there's quite a bit of color here, so the red does stand out a little bit, so that's good. And the current value is 2 is above the target of 0 by 2. So it's just a verbal confirmation of the state of the current number of defects in relation to the target that we've got. In here we've got the medium, so we can see we've got a trend again. We've got the value here that's the target value below 250, and we can see it's sitting at 285. And we've got that confirmation below there as well, and the same for the low, and the same for this overall analysis here. Total number of defects is reduced by 32% over the period. At the start of the period it was 1167, the high point during the period. So I've put the high point here just to show that it's possible to put some additional information in. And then the current value of 790 is above the target of 700 by 90. So you can clearly see that we've got some issues here in terms of each area. Now, I didn't want to just use the total number because it could hide some underlying trends here. We could have a total number that's above target, but have loads of medium, not too many lows and loads of highs. So it's important that we've got it broken down by each one of these different groupings. And the overall trend here, well, if all of these are over, then the overall trend is bound to be over. And that's going to allow us to see if we're getting better or worse over time. So generally speaking, we've got an improving trend. We've almost down by about a third, well, 32% tells us here, and that is really good. The high risk defects have increased slightly, but by 100%, 1 to 2 is not a massive deal. These are coming down nicely, so overall not on target, but a good picture overall is what's being displayed for this particular piece of for this particular plan. Okay, so hopefully that's been useful for you. And hopefully it's give you a little bit of an idea about how you might want to construct a risk management dashboard. A few principles, a few bits and pieces here about setting up how you might want to put some information that helps to just portray a little bit of extra information. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you've got any additional comments, then I'd love to hear, or any risk dashboards that you've created yourself, anything that's worked well for you, then stick it in the comments below. It'd be fantastic just to share that. And if you want to keep up to date with the latest videos, I produce a video or release a video once every week, then hit the subscribe button. I am going to create a course that explains step by step how I created this dashboard. So that'll be something I'll drip feed over the next month or so, and I'm going to go into the details of how I created this dashboard. So if you want to create it, you can go and you can look and you can see how I've put it together. You can see how I've done specific parts of it, and yeah, if you want to build one yourself, then great. We can get a course that will talk you through that. Thanks again for listening, and I will talk to you on the next video.